Welcome to your community of fee-for-service financial advisors who are successfully building profitable firms that serve the next generation of clients. You'll learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your great life and help clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to welcome XYPN member Kaysi Gordon, founder of Kaysi Gordon Financial Planning, on the show today. Kaysi started her career at UBS, and after a short hiatus in public accounting, came back to UBS and joined a team that was focused on doing financial planning for ultra-high net worth clients. She spent 14 years there learning the ins and outs of serving those clients and was the first on her team to get her CFP designation. While there, she started a weekly devotional that she's now been doing for 7 years, and it helped lay the foundation for her current niche of working with women of faith that are in transition. She ultimately felt called to leave UBS and joined another organization that let her start building her own client base, and she learned a lot about the type of clients she wanted to serve and the service model that would work for both her and for her clients. In late 2021, after 2 years at that firm, she left and launched her own firm with the help of XY Planning Network. She's been growing quickly, and her clear niche has helped as she's getting in front of, speaking engagements in front of her ideal clients, getting referrals from other advisors and center of influence, and more. She also talks about how important time of life is, as she is a single mom with a 10-year-old daughter, who, by the way, she co-authored a book with, and how her life stage has impacted the design of her business and how she ultimately wants her life to look. This is a really fun interview you don't want to miss. Without further ado, here's my interview with Kaysi. As the host, you can probably tell that I really enjoy these conversations with XYPN members who are sharing their very real and inspiring stories. The real part is especially impactful for me. It's true that the rules of safety are written in blood, and we all gain from listening to those who have been there, learned from that. If you'd like to learn more from the experiences of others or to share your own, or maybe just need other sources of inspiration, go to xyplanningnetwork.com/events and register to join one of our monthly webinars where you can participate in these impactful conversations. Hey, Kaysi, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you so much. It is my privilege to be here.
I'm excited to be able to explore more. I know a little bit of your story, but excited to learn more about your background and what led you to become an entrepreneur, as well as dig into your sort of unique planning process and your niche. So to sort of kick things off, would you give listeners just a quick overview of the practice, where you're located, your kind of client that you typically work with, and then we'll dig in from there.
Sure. So I am located in Valley Stream, New York, so Long Island. I launched a firm last year, so February of 2022. Thank you so much, XYPN, for making that process as amazing as it was. And I serve women of faith who are going through some kind of financial transition in their lives. So whether it is changing careers or planning for retirement or just starting to think differently about money, I realized that so many of the women I'm serving, they're making good money, but they're not necessarily sure of what the next steps ought to be outside of the 401k. What else should I be doing and how else should I be thinking about that? So I just love working with women and to be able to have such a personal relationship outside of the financial planning aspect of what we do.
Fantastic. So you launched just over a year ago from the time of this recording. How many client households are you working with now?
So that's there's a backstory. Okay. I actually left the Wirehouse in 2019, and the team that I started with said, all the clients you bring on are yours. So that was the most amazing setup. And so when I launched last year, I had about 4.5 million of AUM to start, and having found XYPN and how kind of giving us permission to do planning in a different way and charging differently. I've brought on about 14 clients in the last year working on planning stuff.
Wow. Okay. I can't wait to dig into that. So to backtrack even pre-Wirehouse world, how did you get into financial planning? Was this your career path all along?
No. um, I'm going to say, and something I shared in another podcast, it was a prayer. So my religion is we don't work on Sabbaths, and I was just starting to get into that religion. And I'm like, Lord, if you want me to not work on the Sabbath, you will need to find me a job that does not have me working on the Sabbath.
Mm.
And so I got an internship at UBS, big Wirehouse. And I was there for 2.5 years, left, went into public accounting. My now former boss tried to convince me to stay before going to accounting. He said, "You're not an accountant." And I said, "Well, I have an accounting degree. I should go find out." And I'd already started the CPA coursework. And almost as soon as I got my CPA license, he called me back and said, this was now 2005, UBS is going towards a wealth management model. And like almost all the financial planning stuff without the term financial planning associated with it. And I said, sounds good. I'd be mentored by one of the top advisors in the country and had been for many years. And so I went back and I was there from 2005 to 2019.
Okay, 14 years after having already been there for a couple of years. So you spent the
Exactly.
majority of your
So
career
I
at
would
UBS.
say even leaving in 2019, I'd already spent almost 17 years of my 20-year whole career at that point with one team, by the way, one team.
That's incredible. I'm curious what pulled you into public accounting. Was it just you weren't doing the work at UBS that you wanted to be doing and want to try something different? Like what sort of took you the direction of public accounting for a bit?
I can't say there was something definitive. I was working on my CPA and, like my CPA license. So there was a path to doing something. And I knew even at 20 or 21 that once you had something, especially education, no one could take it away from you. And because I had the accounting degree, I already started passing parts of the CPA exam. And back then it was like stretched out over the course of years, right, to take the exam. And that's basically what I went. I said, you know what, I'm on this path. I should go explore what this path looks like. And I quickly realized that it was not my path. But even now, 20 odd, like almost 20 years later, it's definitely the CPA license is one of those great things to have because there's just so much that comes with it.
Absolutely. So you were at UBS for 14 straight years, for 17 of the 20 years. What type of work were you doing at UBS? Because again, we think, when I think of UBS, I think of Wirehouse. You're just cold calling, selling stocks, right? Like that's the mentality we probably have about the wirehouses. So I guess what was your experience there over that 14 years?
So, as I said, I worked with one of the largest teams in the country. We did a lot of hedge funds, private equity. We did not do cold calls by then. My now former boss was fully well established and it was all relationship based and referral based, and all of that. So there was none of the cold calling. And to be honest, I did not even know I was doing sales. And this is such a funny story. Like it was probably over 10 years in of my, my second go around there. And I was interviewing with another company. This is probably the first time I'm telling this story publicly. I was interviewing with another company, another wirehouse, and they're like, "Do you do sales?" And I'm like, "No, I'm relationship based." And of course, I did not get the job, right? Because I'm not going on and selling. And it easily took another year plus before I realized that we had been selling the whole time. However, it was so relationship based and so based on what we knew of our clients and what made sense for them that it didn't feel like the traditional sales that we did.
Yeah, it's so interesting what our perception of sales is. I mean, we think of door-to-door knocking or cold calling, like that's sales. And I hear that a lot from advisors. Well, I don't want to do sales. I'm like, I get it. I don't want to knock on doors trying to get 401k rollovers either. Like, oh, you've been laid off. Let's move that money over to an IRA. Like, I don't want to do that either. But to your point, in the end, you're selling. You're just doing it in a different way. And so, but it's interesting because when you're on a team, a lot of times you think of sort of whoever that lead advisor is probably the one who's out rainmaking, generating the leads and bringing in the clients. But it sounds like you and the other advisors were also doing sales as part of that team.
So yeah, so my role or the title, and try saying this fast, was Senior Wealth Strategy Associate. So I was an associate to the financial advisors, and we did a lot of the analytical work, making the recommendations, sitting together in a team structure. It was very team oriented, and I definitely appreciate that. So there was the lead advisor, there was an associate on it, on the client side of it, and then there's an operations person.
Hmm.
And again, by the time I was leaving, the team had grown to over 13 people, so not a small team. And we each had a different role. I had a lot of client facing relationship in addition to my analytical roles. So and again, because of my CPA background, and by then um, an MBA and a CFP, I was able to talk the language of an advisor while being there, but still in an associate role.
CPA, CFP, MBA. You're starting to sound like Kitsis here with all the letters.
And I've added another one, CKA.
So when did you get your MBA? Was that while you were at UBS?
Yeah, so I started back at UBS in 2005. And of course, being single, like, what else is there to do? Go to school. So I got my MBA night school, so part time, while working at UBS. Did that from, I think, 2007 to 2010. And that coursework prepared me. So I have a dual concentration MBA in finance, accounting, and taxation. Don't say that fast. And then that coursework prepared me to take the CFP exam. So I was kind of exempt through that. So I did self study. And for those listening, I failed the first time, but it does not matter when you have the letters behind your name eventually, right? So failed the first time and then took it the second time and passed.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Did you do anything different the second time, or was it really just more study hours or something else?
I think life was just happening. So I took it in the summertime, the first time. In the last few days, there were a lot of life events just happening. And then it was one of those like close fails, and you knew it was a close fail. And I did not want to do it again. I'm just like, I have all these designations already. I already did all of this. And I remember my niece in law said to me, she's like, Kaysi, Auntie Kaysi, I look up to you. You should really do this again. And I'm just like, come on, that's
Oh, the
serious
guilt
guilt
trip.
there. And I took it again, and really just happy that I did.
That's cool. That's awesome. So when you were at UBS, what was sort of your typical client that the team was serving?
So high net worth, ultra high net worth. So clients typically with larger than 5 million in AUM.
Okay.
That it made sense to have the complicated investment strategies for. I think over even after like 2005, when I went back with the wealth management model of what we were going to, we did not start implementing some of those strategies for quite a few years. It was a process. But we started doing more estate planning with estate attorneys, making sure the right insurance policies as were necessary were implemented. But the bread and butter had been the types of investments that we did and that we could do for clients who wanted something differently.
Okay. So it was a lot of investment management. It sounds like financial planning sort of got added incrementally over time.
Exactly that.
Would you say you were doing comprehensive financial planning by the end? Like, did it look like comprehensive financial planning at that point?
It did. I'd say in the last few years, more so, but for very few clients. Like some of the questions that you're answering for a client who has 30, $40 million is going to be very different than the type of clients now, right? So we started implementing more financial planning, but again, I think heavier on the investment side.
And then with those investments, was your team evaluating all of these private placement investments and hedge funds and all that, or was there sort of like an investment team at UBS, sending some information through? Because that is a lot for. I mean, it's a reasonably sized team, but still, that's a lot.
So again, my former boss, he had been in the space for 20 odd years before hedge funds was a thing. And so he was one of those advisors who were grandfathered into being able to source his own hedge funds and
Mm,
equities. So he was able to bring to his client base things that were not available to most of the rest of UBS.
got
So
it. Okay.
again, having laid the foundation for many, many years prior, um, to be able to do things that not many advisors were, and he created quite a reputation for doing the right thing for clients.
Oh, that's awesome. And I imagine that also was a nice, part of the sales pitch process of, having access to certain investments that even other advisors at UBS don't get access to. You're not even selling against the other firms. You can sort of sell against other advisors within the UBS network as well.
Exactly so.
So you mentioned that you were able to bring in some of your own clients. Were you sort of restricted in a way to like only bringing in ultra high net worth clients, or was there a shift at some point that happened that allowed you to start working with clients that maybe didn't meet that 5 million AUM threshold?
So let me just step back and clarify that. So I left UBS in 2019. And so it was the team that I went to afterwards,
Oh, got it.
that first we were at a broker dealer. And then in September of 2020, my partner launched his own RIA. So I got to see a little bit of that process, like coming from the world that I came from. I had no idea this side of the world existed. But I'd say in 2014, I got this desire to start like thinking about what the next chapter would look like and
Mm,
who do I really want to work with. And I'd say even then it was to work with women who kind of looked like me in terms of making decent money, but who was giving them that kind of advice, that kind of hand holding, that I believe I got at UBS, just being immersed in financial guidance. And I said that to someone, and they're like, no, no, you can't say that because you won't be hired by another wirehouse. And I kind of took that, but just kind of thinking, like, I don't know if I want to be hired by another wirehouse, right? But again, not knowing that there was this side of the world. And again, that's why I'm so grateful to XY for opening the door to what did not look possible.
absolutely. Yeah. So okay, so you leave UBS, you went to another, so it sounds like more of an RIA
Mhm.
and then ultimately you were there for a couple of years, and then that is sort of the transition point to launching your own firm. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. So what caused you to leave UBS in the end? Was it this sort of desire to work with clients who looked like you, who are in more of a financial situation similar to you?
So, going back to my faith based background, I was at work. It was a Friday afternoon, and as clear as day, I heard a change is coming. Okay, yes, I've been waiting for this, like waiting for this. And honestly, I thought it was going to another team somewhere else.
Mm,
And like, I just thought it was going to be working with another large team, taking care of clients and getting compensated fairly decently, right? And it was like, no, no, that's not what it's going to be. And I was going to be starting from scratch, zero clients, zero leads. I think also in an analytical role, you also don't even know how to be a financial advisor, right, or lead financial advisor. And I think that was the beauty of going and working with this other team, even though I was responsible for bringing in my own clients and doing all of that. I got to learn how to be a financial advisor in that role.
so just for my clarity, so you're at UBS, they say a change is coming, and basically the change was you're
The
on your
change
own.
was more of a spiritual
Oh,
hearing
okay, okay.
as
Got it, got
opposed
it.
to someone saying that.
Okay.
So that was in October of 2018, but I did not leave there until May of 2019. So I had like a 6 month window. I told them in December that I was leaving. So
Okay.
again, another unusual thing whenever I've shared that, you're like, you you told them that you were leaving and you weren't asked to leave. No, like that just kind of like people are asked to leave when they tell, you know.
They
Um,
are. Yeah, that happens more frequently than not. So that's good to
right.
know.
So I was there and they actually asked me to stay longer. more than the time that I told them.
Mm.
And so I did not leave there until May of 2019 to go now work with this new team as of June of 2019.
Okay. So you make the transition to the new team. What ultimately sort of transpired that led you from there to launching your own firm? Did you know that was going to be the path since you were able to bring in your own clients, or was that sort of another change that was unexpected over the years?
I love that you said it that way. It was another change that was totally unexpected. So my thinking might have been, so again, I was at UBS for 14 years straight. So I'm a long term kind of stick with it, make it work. And a little over 2 years in, I started thinking about what my 5 year plan was going to be. And the 5 year plan was, I'm going to hang out here for another, 3 years. It's already 2 years. My birthday had just passed. So it was like September of 2021. And within a matter of, I don't know, hours or days, it was a very, very short time frame. I felt like, no, this is not going to be. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe a year. I'll get to that 10 million AUM mark, and then I can make the next move. And quite clearly, I felt the sense that no, this is a now move. I'm not ready for this move at the moment. Like I
Mm-hmm.
have not made these metrics of income or AUM or any of these things that I would have felt comfortable having. But that was in October-ish. I reached out to XY. They connected me with someone at Schwab. And even that phone call was just an incredible phone call. I talked to Agatha Beckett, and she just confirmed all the things that had been going through my mind, and I felt like I'd been being led to. And my firm was registered by February of 2022. So not
That's
even like,
awesome.
I don't know, we started the process. Kendra and I, again, huge shout out to Kendra. We started that before Thanksgiving, and firm was registered February 3rd of 2022.
22. Okay, that's awesome. Were you working with the clients inside of your current niche at your previous firm? Were you finding a lot of women of faith that were looking for financial planning, or did that sort of develop later?
That developed later. So I don't know if I knew how to articulate that I wanted to work with women of faith.
Okay.
And I remember talking through networking, I met like a coach. So when I was leaving UBS, I got a coach, and I just published my first faith-based devotional book geared towards women. And he said, you should combine faith and financial planning. That was not something I'd ever heard of.
Mm.
And it kind of like, he said it, I heard it, but I didn't hear it. And then I want to say about a year later, I was, again, through networking, I met another coach who's become a dear friend of mine. And he knew I'd worked with a coach. And he said, did your coach tell you you should be combining faith and finance together? I'm like, he did. He did.
Did he email
Um,
you?
but even then, I had to figure it out. And I remember talking to someone else. It was a networking call. And he kept on asking, if I met someone who needed financial guidance, how would I know to send them to you?
Mm.
And I'd say it was one of my most frustrating networking calls, but I came off that call with, I serve women of faith. I serve women of faith. And that's the thing that would separate me from all the other financial advisors, because we know that there are lots of people who title themselves as financial advisors, right?
Sure.
So that was going to be one of the things that would separate me. So it was quite a process. And even when I started, because of the world that I came from, I think I swung completely the other end, working with clients who probably did not need my guidance yet. Right. So I started with younger clients, not charging enough, and just, yeah, the typical story, not enough to pay the bills, working, but not enough to pay the bills.
Mhm.
And so I had to kind of right size the ship. And being able to start fresh in 2022 allowed me to kind of assess who I was working with, who do I really want to work with, and how to make that move.
it's such a unique path that you've taken. I don't hear this very often, if ever, that you sort of had the opportunity to try on entrepreneurship in this previous firm where you were able to bring in clients, work with a lot of different clients, really sort of hone your niche and your message and all of that. And then you sort of had a second try at it in a way when you launched your own RIA. It sounds like you were able to really just get clear on, and like I said, hit the reset button, be sure you're working with the clients who really valued the services, were willing to pay you, that you enjoyed working with. So that's really cool. I don't hear that very often.
Thank you.
And so when you say women of faith, is it any faith? Is it a particular faith that of client that you work with?
That's a very interesting question, and I've thought of it myself. It really is of any faith. You believe in something that's bigger than you. So even though I'm a Christian, I work with women who are in believe different things. They might not believe the same as me as a Christian, but I'm able to have conversations in such a way that it takes the overwhelm out of finance, and it just becomes a real conversation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and I've really thought about that, and I don't think it's specific to Christianity. I think it's just showing up in a way that the women know that I truly care about them as an individual more than their finances or to get them to their financial goals.
And I imagine it means a lot to know that you're not going to enter the meeting with judgment around their faith and the way their faith is incorporated into their finances. Because in the end, faith, obviously, our values and what we value impacts how we spend money, how we save money, the things we choose to do. So, you've been look at your website. You have a devotional, sort of a devotional blog, and it looks like this has been going on for a while. How long have you been writing this blog?
So in June it'll be 7 years. I started in
7 years. Okay.
2016.
So you were
Yeah.
at UBS when that started.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's funny. You can't do a whole lot of things when you're in such a wirehouse from a compliance perspective, but that had nothing to do with finances. And I felt so called to do it when my friend said it. I'm like, I'm not even a writer. Like I came up with all the excuses as to why I couldn't do it or shouldn't do it. And then I ran out of excuses and I started doing it. So yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. So so it wasn't a finance blog, so therefore UBS compliance doesn't have
Right.
oversight over it. It's truly a devotional blog. And so what has sort of given you the energy to maintain that? I mean, 7 years, 350 plus. No, that's bad math. Yeah, 350-ish blog posts. That's a lot. That's a long time to stick with something. So I guess what has given you the energy to continue to publish?
My thought process is as long as I get a message to share, I'm going to keep sharing. And so it forces me to be intentional about, did I learn something this week that is shareable? And the lessons keep coming. And thankfully, it does not take me very long to write. And like sometimes I almost get embarrassed to say that I write it Sunday morning. It goes out at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, and at 7 o'clock, I'm like, okay. So I don't sleep it on Sundays, by the way, right? So I'm writing it, and it takes me 15 to 20 minutes, if that, to write, a 300-word thing that just becomes clear as I'm writing it and what the message is going to be. And sometimes I don't even know fully what the message is going to be until I'm done.
Sure.
So yeah.
And has that led to, well, I guess first, before I ask my clients, do you have sort of a steady following? Is that something you put a lot of energy into sort of getting that message out? I guess what has been the experience of engagement with those devotionals?
So I'll say that through that, I've published 2 devotionals. I'm writing slowly writing the third. I've also co-authored a children's book with my daughter because she's seen me write, right? So she's like, we should do this together. I posted on Facebook. I've posted it, since the beginning. And there's a following. I don't know what those numbers are. I have a group that still has 400 and something people in it, maybe close to 500, even after this many years. But I also recognize that I share in other groups, and there are people around the world who will probably never ever meet me, but would have read something that I've written. So it's
Absolutely.
become less about knowing the numbers and just continuing to make the impact regardless of whom it's reaching.
Yeah, it is one of those things with content. I feel like we can get skewed in our views where we're like, oh, only 100 people read that. Only 200 people read that. But if I put you on stage in front of 200 people speaking, like that's an intimidating, well, at least it is for me. It's an intimidating thing where, it's taken a lot of practice to not get fearful of speaking to that many people. And so sometimes content, is one of those like, we're like, oh, it's got to be tens of thousands or millions of people. And it's like, it really doesn't. Even just a few dozen people who are reading it, one, you're having the impact that you want to be able to have. It's a great way to scale that impact versus having 24, 30-minute calls a week with folks, that even if it was 24 people that read it. And the content lives on. And like I said, it's then leading to some of these other projects like books and such, which is really cool.
So, Alan, even before you go on, I'll add to that. So I was on a flyer for a finance presentation I was doing for another church, which also has opened up the door because I'm faith, finance, and all of that. So I did that this weekend, and the pastor friend shared it with me, saying he'd shown it to his secretary, and her response was, "We should get her to come to our church. She's been at XY
oh,
church,
cool.
and she's really good." And so again, it comes back to I may never know what my impact is or who's in the audience, but people are seeing it. And Carl Richards says this all the time, or I've stolen it. You have to play in traffic to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been playing in traffic and getting hit. And it's sometimes we want the overnight success, and I talk about that a lot. But when I listened to Andy Panko's podcast this morning with you, and he did quite a bit of work before getting to the point of that level of success. But we see where he started the Facebook group, not realizing that he literally plunked all his energy of the early days of COVID into creating this Facebook group and to get the level of success that he got. So I'm not that I'm learning, but I'm definitely recognizing that be careful of the overnight successes that you see.
Yeah, I was just looking up the Steve Jobs quote says, if you look if you really look closely, most overnight successes took a long time.
Exactly so.
Yeah, a lot of times there's 10, 20 plus years behind that success. And we generally, Michael does a really good job of this on his podcast where he's really looking, he uses that iceberg metaphor of you only see the 10%, really trying to get to that 90% because it is amazing how many tiers are in that 90%. And if you don't, I don't know any entrepreneur who's found success that hasn't cried multiple times. And just, you just get punched in the gut repeatedly. And that is the process, especially when you're trying to do things differently. You're pushing against the mold. I imagine that you have run into some headwinds at times, especially, trying to incorporate faith into finance. That is not always going to be popular. Anytime you put yourself out there that authentically, whether it's faith or something else, you're gonna have haters, whether they tell you that or not. Like there's going to be that headwind, and so that coupled with entrepreneurship, it does take a lot. And I would imagine you can answer this for yourself, but that probably being able to lean on your faith in those times has been helpful.
Absolutely. But also, again, I've been able to do something that I never, ever dreamed in my wildest dreams to be able to do, and to be able to sit down with someone who is looking at their money, and to have a compassionate, kind, yet very frank conversation around how they're dealing with it. And they walk away from the conversation knowing that it was filled with kindness and grace, right? And to be able to do that is just like, wow.
That is, and I imagine for your clients as well, it's kind of a wow when they may have experienced other advisor processes and such that don't necessarily provide that same level of support.
Right.
when we talk about a niche, I've been trying to sort of really Michael and I have both been trying to shift the conversation around, it's not so much, it's not a profession, right? It's about serving a need, helping someone through sort of a common problem. And it sounds like the problem for you and the challenge, it's not problem, this sounds so negative, but the challenge is in that incorporating of a person's faith into that planning process. So can you talk about how sort of how your financial planning process looks different than maybe other advisors because of the focus on working with women of faith?
So, and I'll say that even in the last couple of weeks, I'm recognizing that I might be tweaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is still the woman of faith, but because we're women of faith, we tend to give so much of ourselves to others, and that's coming at a detriment. And I'm seeing it in the financials, where you're giving so much and you're not taking care of yourself as well. And I'm starting to have more and more conversations around that, and especially as I listen to some of the podcast recordings that you've done with others. So there's the faith component of it, but it's also, how do you give to others in a way that is not self-sacrificing?
That's sustainable.
Right. It's sustainable. It's not self-sacrificing, but you also see that how that translates to life. And I've had a saying for quite a few years that finances do not just affect our finances, it affects our whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the impact of the woman who is giving so much of herself, whether herself or financially or whatever else, it usually comes at a detriment to them. So I'm starting to noodle with the idea of tweaking it and even becoming a little bit more fine-tuned. In terms of the financial planning process, I'm meeting with clients quarterly, when I'm going through the traditional financial planning. As I said, I started on the other end where I was not getting paid enough and giving too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of scaled that back and said, charging more and meeting quarterly. But now my clients, a few of them have said, I'd like to meet more often. So it's that hand holding. It's now right sizing the ship for them, making sure that they're on the right path. So I'm starting to see that maybe for some of those clients, they'll have more upfront meetings. And then we can taper off to a more normalized schedule. But while they're getting a handle of all the different parts and the moving parts of their financial lives, to be able to make the next step.
Okay. That's awesome. So what is sort of your typical, or I guess minimum fee, new client today coming in? What are they paying for the various services that you offer?
Sure. So it's $3,950. I started last year at $3,500. Raised it at the end of last year to $3,950. Billed on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
So one of the things I think I keep saying, I wanted to serve women who are like me, and I keep going back to what would I be willing to pay for this service. Um, so again, and fully, I'd say a year in. I still haven't figured out quite how to count it. Is it 3 years in or 1 year in? So it all depends on perspective. Um, so at this stage, that I'm comfortable there, but I could also see where if I'm doing a lot more on the upfront, that I'd have to raise it to be realistic and to be able to serve the number of clients that I want to serve. Because I also, and again, this is something that's come up in a few of your other podcasts about being in the season of life, right? And I'm a mom. I have a 10-year-old who is, for the first 7 years of my life, I was running into the city every day and did not have the same opportunities to now. So my home is 2 minutes away from school, and my office is 2 minutes from there. So, like last Friday, I went and I helped with or Thursday, I helped with the book fair setup, and I was in the office in like 10 minutes, right?
Right.
So to be able to do those things and to show up for her, and she gets so excited still that her mom is there, and she got first choice of the books because we were there. So to be able to do those things in this season, and then as seasons change to figure that what that looks like for the business.
Yeah, I want to loop back to that for sure. Let me close out the fee conversation just because I'm curious on the service model. You came from a world where you're doing a lot of very sophisticated investment strategies that are typically for your ultra high net worth. Are you providing investment management for your clients?
I do. And again, I'm thinking about what would I want to pay. So up to
Mhm.
$500,000, it's 1.25. Above that, it's 1%. And then kind of going down, the higher the dollar amount gets. And my thought process is if a client is coming to me with even $400,000, Andy Pango said it. It's just like, are you doing that much more on the investing side? The real value that I'm adding is the planning conversations. So I'm not going to double charge them. I'll say, as long as you're paying my minimum fee, we'll do the investments and we'll do the planning conversations combined.
Okay, so you're not charged. So if they have 400,000 or 500,000, you're not charging both a planning fee and investment
That's
management.
correct.
They
Yeah.
offset. Okay, that makes sense. And then are you leveraging some of those more sophisticated private placements, hedge funds, those types of investment strategies, or have you sort of shifted into a new, I guess, a different investment philosophy that works for your client base?
I've completely shifted. I believe in keeping it simple, and especially for my client base, they're not looking for, I don't serve ultra high net worth clients, right? I serve individuals and working towards high net worth clients. They don't need the overly complicated stuff. I find that the clients who I serve and enjoy serving are the ones who are looking for more building on the fundamentals. So keeping it simple so that they can get farther and to be able to do more while they're enjoying their lives.
Okay. Yeah, and obviously investment management, investment philosophy should be catered to the clients that you're working with. If somebody
Right.
came to you with $20 million, that is a different investment strategy than 400,000, which makes a lot of sense. One thing that I'm curious about is the transition from just the planning needs, the conversations when you talk to someone with minimum $5 million. But I assume you're working with clients with 10, 20, $40 million is so different than the clients you're working with now. Do you feel like did you have to sort of relearn financial planning or learn a new style, like learn a new financial planning to work with your clients since the conversations are just so vastly different?
I had to unlearn a lot of things.
Mm,
And I said this to Carl Richards once. It's just like, I literally had to unlearn a lot of the things that I've been taught I learned so much, right? Working with the team that I did, learning how to take care of clients well. But there was also the day-to-day financial planning for the clients that I serve now. And I pulled out my fundamentals book a couple weeks ago because I'm like, am I doing this right? Right? Am I covering all the topics that I need to cover? And again, I took the CFP exam in 2011. I passed in 2011. So it's been a long time. And I just like, am I covering what my clients need? And I've just also come to recognize that financial planning is so different based on who you serve. And the more podcasts I listen to and the more strategies of what I hear, it's just like it depends on who you're serving and what their needs are.
it really does. Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah.
CFP covers whatever 180 topics, and they don't even cover all of the things that it should, in my opinion,
Right.
to be able to work with clients. And then, that's the 80% that's like, I don't know, you're the sort of similar for everybody. Then there's the 10 to 20% that's unique for your niche.
Right.
That CFP is never going to cover. And sometimes that's technical. In your case, that's much more on the psychology side, I guess, of just how to communicate and how to incorporate those, that faith. And to your point, it's really interesting. Many times, there'll be some coaching conversation about helping people dial back their giving emotionally, because
Right.
if it's taking too much from them. So, which is a conversation most advisors don't want to have, nor could they have if they were forced to, which is really cool. So when you're thinking about, you mentioned sort of time of the life, and you've got to, you said your daughter's 10. I
She's
love
10.
that you co-wrote a book together. How old was she when you wrote the book?
This was in 2020. We were home in the pandemic, and I love this story. So my home office had been set up, and I had my paper, And we bought a dollar stapler from Dollar Tree, and she came and she cut off a little strip on the paper and she stapled it, and she's like, we should write a book together. What should it be about? And she said something about talent. I think she'd heard that story at church the weekend before.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote Amelia and her many talents, and she loves the piano, she loves singing, she loves to do all these things. And so I basically wrote a book on that and wrote the end. And I read it to her, and I'm like, I think we just wrote a book. So I reached out to my publisher, and she gave me the name of an illustrator, and we got it illustrated, and we put it on Amazon. And she's like, I want to gift everyone in my class. And I'm like, and she's very generous. And so we gifted one to everyone in her class that year. And it's just such a fun story when kids see us doing things. And there's the authoring of the book, right? Or the co-authoring of the book, but there's also the financial side where, and again, another story that I love, she's 10 and we talk about money in our home. I'm a single mom. I'm divorced. And she, whenever she wants to buy something, she says, can you check if I'm in a financial position to do so? And so it is, like, I'm amazed watching her and to see how much she's learning when I'm working from home, and she's hearing these conversations, or we're talking about, can she afford to do something? All the things that she's picking up. So COVID definitely had some benefits to that.
Yeah, it's just amazing what our kids pick up on in terms of what we do and those habits and curiosity about the things that we're doing. So that's so cool that, it's very obvious she's been watching you, being an author, being savvy financially. And I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, starting a firm as a single mom with a, 8-year-old, I guess at the time, like
Mhm.
that is not the time where we're supposed to become an entrepreneur, right? We're supposed to wait, but it sounds like you ultimately were called to do this and felt like it was the right time, whether you agreed that it was or not.
100%, right? And even back to your point of, you don't know many entrepreneurs who get the chance to be an entrepreneur while they're figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had the team structure that I was used to. I never would have thought that I enjoy being a solo advisor. In my mind, I needed the team. And I needed the team to be able to transition in that way. I also needed to see what the other side of the world looked like from a financial advisory perspective. But now I feel like I'm a solo advisor, but I have this amazing community of, again, shout out to XY. I have my cohort. We still meet once a week. We started that in January of 2022, and we've become friends. And we have the most honest conversations about all the things that are going on as new business owners. I have a partner who I consider a true partner, from the team that I worked with previously. And I rely on him. He's my right hand person, for just so many of the things. So did I need that in between phase? Absolutely. And I encourage anyone who's thinking of what does life look like as a financial advisor to try to find a spot where they can, if they can get paid even better, while they figure it out, but to also make sure that you have your finances in order to do that.
So when you think about what you're building towards, again, some of this is time of life. You mentioned earlier, sort of the number of clients you want to work with. Like when you think about that 5-year plan for the business, where do you want this business to go? Do you want to grow big? Do you want to stay solo? Do you want to hire? Like what do you have in your head and sort of what's the plan that will likely be disrupted? But what's the plan at this point?
As long as we agree, it will likely be disrupted, right? I did not plan to be here. So the 5-year plan is hopefully to be at a point where maybe I'm no longer taking clients as actively, or I've also kind of in my mind, I'm okay with graduating clients when they no longer need me so that I can serve others. I don't want to be at the point where I'm running myself ragged. Um, Maybe to have an assistant, maybe a part-time. I don't want the traditional large team. I don't want the large firm. Again, having come from the large firm, I see all the other things that come with that. So it's not my desire to grow this huge business outside of myself. I want to be able to take care of clients in a way that they know that it's more than financial planning that I'm offering. Um,
Absolutely.
right. My traditional number has been to get to 75 clients, but also now, as of this morning, thinking maybe it's 60 if I charge more or and give more service based on the need. So yeah, still kind of noodling all of those things in my mind.
Absolutely. No, I love asking the question, but also, again, recognizing that the best laid plans are just ripe for disruption. And you want to know sort of the direction you're headed, but
Right.
also we learn a lot as we go. And, I know a lot of advisors that think they have a number in their head and halfway there, they're like, no, that number was way too high. Or they get there and they're like, that number was lower than
Right.
I thought it needed to be. And so lot of learning to be done. So as we're coming up on our time together, I'll ask you the final question. And that is, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what do you think that piece of advice would be to younger Kaysi?
I think, and I've thought about this question quite a bit, and it's a hard one.
It is.
So be diligent with my personal savings. I mean, I've done pretty okay, but be more diligent still while enjoying life. And I'd say even more so, wishing that I had, a few years. So I felt called to this side of the world in this manner, but wishing I had a few years to kind of have that runway. And it does not take 6 months like I thought to be back to my corporate salary. It does not take that.
Yep.
Right. So making sure that you have your own financial life in order before you make that leap, so that when you do, you can fully focus on where you're going and how you want to get there, without having to take any shortcuts. So yeah, so that would be the advice to my younger self and anyone else listening, to make sure that you have the runway if you're going to start in this business, um, to be able to survive 2 to 3 years before you start seeing any kind of real income.
Absolutely. Well, Kaysi, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your story and path to entrepreneurship. Even though it maybe wasn't the plan, you've just found amazing success, and look forward to doing a catch up interview one day to hear how things progress for you. So thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Also, be sure to go to XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP to join our private Facebook group for fee-for-service advisors. It's the community you've been looking for that's there to provide support no matter where you are in your journey. Best of all, it's free. Again, that's XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP.
Thanks for listening to XYPN Radio. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to leave a review that will help grow the movement of fee-for-service advisors, serving next-gen clients and building the firms of their dreams. That's all for today's episode. Until next time.